Japan Makes Me Scared, a podcast to the chilling realm of Japanese horror stories. My name is Junpei, and I will invite you to the mysterious world of Kaidan, exploring spine-tingling experiences that have haunted Japan. Konbanwa minasan. Welcome back to another episode of Japan Makes Me Scared. I'm Junpei, your host, and I'm gonna share various horror, scary stories of Kaidan in this podcast. Today's question is, has anybody read or called your name wrong in your life? I think it is probably quite common among Japanese people, but the reason is not because our name is difficult to pronounce or it is too long. The difficulty with Japanese names comes from the fact that we can decide how to read the names ourselves. You probably don't get what I'm talking about, so let me elaborate. For example, let's say you see the name written with M-I-C-H-A-E-L. Most people would probably recognize the name Michael when they see this sequence of letters. In many cases, you can guess a name from the written letters, although the reading may be a little bit different depending on the person's background. But the way Japanese people give their names is quite different. Japanese names mostly use characters called kanji, but you're free to decide how to read them. Of course, there are basic reading rules for each kanji. For example, Kaidan is made up of two kanji characters, Kai meaning strange, and Dan meaning story. And few Japanese make the mistake of reading each kanji character the wrong way, if they know the rules. However, when it comes to names, the basic rules often don't work. To take an extreme example, it is also acceptable to use kanjis for Kaidan, but read it as Pikachu. Recently, there have been a number of names whose readings can't be guessed from kanji, and I can also feel that when I heard the French names of my daughter. It seems to be a trendy idea that tries to express the uniqueness of each name by doing so. Personally, I think it's still cute to try it with these fancy names, but when I think of the possibility that, in the future, there will be an 80-year-old man with the name Pikachu, I can't hide my sympathy for them, to be honest. Anyway, today's story is about, she's calling out with a different name, but is she actually calling me? That's the kind of story I'm going to tell you about. Alright, let's move on to the storytelling part. Episode 25, Yuki-chan. The original story is from Junji Inagawa. He's a Kaidan legend who's helped spread the modern Kaidan world across all of Japan. In this podcast, I have also featured one of his stories as well in episode 2, The Long Body, so you could check it out if you haven't listened to that yet. Today's story is one of his iconic Kaidan stories that's super popular with many Kaidan lovers. From here, I will describe I as Junji Inagawa himself for convenience. This is a story about the daughter of a friend of mine. His daughter was grown up enough and had left college to work for a broadcaster. Then the thing is, she wanted to live alone for some time. because, she'd been with her parents all her life, then she would be living with somebody if she got married. She didn't want to miss this chance to be independent and feel free a bit. Well, that's understandable, isn't it? So when my friend asked me, what should I do? I said, well, living on your own for a short time is fine, isn't it? It gives you a sense of independence as well. Then they started looking for a place for a daughter. Her workplace was in Utsuya, Tokyo, so she'd be around that area. And finally, they found a nice flat. It wasn't too far from a station, and had a cozy atmosphere with a bit of nature around as well. It's in a modern apartment-style building. Actually, it wasn't that cheap in the area. Also, the windows were facing the street. But it was higher than the ground, like 70 to 80 centimeters higher. So even though there was a window there, you don't have to worry about people looking in from the outside. Plus, the windows had frosted glass, and the flat had a self-locking door, which made it even less worrisome. So the father said yes, and they decided on that flat in the end. Of course, the daughter was happy. She bought all sorts of cute things for the flat, like making her own castle there, and she was having a satisfying start there. This was in the early spring of that year. And then she was finally starting that new job. On the first day, she came to a meeting for her orientation. They were telling her like, you gotta do this kind of task, or you'll be working with this person, something like that. After all that serious stuff, they said, it's all done for today, so do you want to have a welcome drink in izakaya? So she had a couple of drinks with some other newbies, and then went back home after. She was going into the flat, locked the door, and put her stuff down. She knew it would be better to put the futon down on the floor to sleep, but she was too tired. Then it was too cold in the early spring, so there was a kotatsu, a Japanese low wooden table frame covered with a blanket, and a small heater installed inside. She put her feet in the kotatsu and lay down on the floor. Her being drunk helped her to sleep immediately, right after. Yuki-chan, Yuki-chan. She heard a voice. It sounded like the voice of a woman. Yuki-chan, Yuki-chan. She slowly opened her eyes and checked her watch. It was after midnight. At first, she thought, it's Tokyo, not the countryside. There must be some people walking the dog in the middle of the night too. You know dogs have human-like names these days, so the name of this dog must be Yuki-chan. She didn't think about that deeply, and went to sleep again a short time later. The next morning, she went to her workplace and did some work until about noon. And in the afternoon, there was a ceremony for new employees. After that, there was again another party with their big groups of company, where she met a bunch of new people and had a lot of fun. When she got home, it was even later than the day before. She was even more tired, so she just directly put her feet into the kotatsu again and fell asleep. Yuki-chan, Yuki-chan. She wasn't sure how much time had passed, but woke up to that voice. Yuki-chan, Yuki-chan. She thought, it was like this yesterday too. Some woman is making a walk around with a dog again. Yuki-chan, Yuki-chan. While hearing the voice again and again, she suddenly felt something weird. If she's walking the dog and the dog's gone away, she would call out many directions like from left to right. However, the voice came from one direction in the same way. It also sounded like coming from the street towards her room. Yuki-chan, Yuki-chan. But I'm not Yuki, so I have nothing to do with it. Even though she was not comfortable with the voice, she couldn't resist to sleep. Then she kept lying down and fell asleep again. Then, Yuki-chan. She heard a voice quite close by. She opened her eyes and looked casually at the window. And there was a person stuck to it. The upper body and hand was stuck to the window glass, and the silhouette still called out, Yuki-chan. Oh, somebody's looking at me. She immediately thought about that. But if you think about it calmly here, you could realize there was no way somebody could be there. Do you remember that window of the flat was 70 to 80 centimeters high off the ground? There was no place for anybody outside of the windows. However, she didn't think about that at the time because, she was drunk and half sleeping then. So she was thinking more like, why is this person looking at me? What a creep. It was frosted glass, so the person on the other side shouldn't have been able to see inside. But she could tell by the silhouette, no matter how, the person was looking at her. Yuki-chan, Yuki-chan. And the voice of the woman also still continued. She decided to ignore the voice and put her face in the kotatsu cover. After a while, Yuki-chan, what do you want tomorrow? Huh? Yuki-chan, what do you want tomorrow? She heard a woman's voice in her room. Yuki-chan, what do you want tomorrow? Then she heard a thumping sound. The voice came closer, as it sounded like the woman was sliding on the tatami floor. Yuki-chan, what do you want tomorrow? That's when she thought this woman was not a living one. The self-locked door was closed, and there was no sign of the door opening. Plus, the window being too high to look from the outside. That was also strange from a normal person in the first place. Oh god, what am I gonna do? As she was thinking this, Yuki-chan, what do you want tomorrow? A knee hit her on the back. The woman was apparently looking at her from above. Yuki-chan, what do you want tomorrow? Help me. Namaidabu, namaidabu, namaidabu. She started chanting the Buddhist mantra. Then her face was being pushed down from the other side of the kotatsu cover. It seems that the woman was pushing the cover with her face. She could feel the mouth around her ear. Also felt the breath. Yuki-chan, what do you want tomorrow? Namaidabu, namaidabu, namaidabu. She kept chanting the mantra, but even so, the faces brought closer and closer. Namaidabu, namaidabu, namaidabu. The futon was pushed down even stronger. And then, with the futon across her ear, I won't leave even if you do that, the voice said. And then she passed out there. When she woke up, it was morning, and she panicked and ran back to her parents' house. When I heard this story, I decided I would do some research on it. So I went to a local izakaya and asked people there. Then one of them said, "Ah, I know that apartment building. There used to be a house, but the older couple who lived there were burned to death in a fire. Then the apartment was built on the side of the old house after the accident." But that's it. It was the old couple who died. But there's no Yuki-chan involved. We don't still know who or what she was. Oh, Shimai, thank you very much for listening to the story. How did you like it? The scary part of this story is, first of all, the fear is simple but irrational. A common pattern in many Kaidan stories is that you go to a haunted or forbidden place and you do bad behavior to invoke the spirits or ghosts there, and you get revenge at the end. This case is scary, but at the same time, you can say that the person who actually did that behavior deserved it, so you can't really feel too sorry for them. However, the daughter in today's story doesn't seem to have done anything particularly wrong. All she did was just start living alone in a flat near her work. And yet, to be struck by this kind of terrifying experience from nowhere, we have to admit that fear can sometimes come on suddenly and unreasonably. It is too scary to think about that possibility, isn't it? The other thing is, it is still unclear who Yuki-chan is, even in the end. As mentioned in the story, the name of the daughter who experienced it is not Yuki. And in the past, there was the previous house fire, and the woman associated with it was an old lady who lived there and was burned to death. But Yuki-chan does not seem to be her either. One possible explanation is that the old woman had a daughter or granddaughter who was named Yuki. And it may be possible that the spirit of the old woman mistook the daughter of the experience for her own family member in this case. Nevertheless, the part where the mouth is pressed against the kotatsu cover felt so realistic in fear, and you can also see some unreasonably malicious intent of the spirit that makes it even scarier. Anyway, do you have any theories on this story as well? I've got a Discord channel where anybody can join and share thoughts and theories. Of course, I'll be there as well. I'm gonna leave the link in the description, so please join and enjoy the interaction if you would. This podcast, Japan Makes Me Scared, is available on almost all popular podcast platforms like Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or Amazon Music. Also, if you push the follow button on the app of your choice. First of all, for me, it will be a huge support and motivation. And for you, you will not miss notifications for future episodes. So please consider following my podcast as well. Alright, we're getting close to the end. So let me say one thing. ありがとうございます again for listening to my podcast. Japan makes me scared. And sayonara for more children fruits next time. Bye.